Welcome to the third edition of the Three Amigos. Well, who are we? We're three Americans, for those of you that haven't seen the earlier shows, three Americans who are living here in Russia. And each week, we're going to bring you a different show, and we are going to give you a perspective on everything from politics in the United States, political events in Europe and around the world, and a geopolitical view on what we think is really happening. We are also going to give you our view and our impressions about living here in Russia. Now, Donald Trump and others have been saying that Russia doesn't have any food, that there's extremely long gas lines, and we can't get the basic essentials of life. So we're going to reflect on that. We're going to tell you what life is like here in Crimea, but basically it'll be a reflection of what life is like in the rest of Russia. Now, we're also going to talk tonight about the threats of war with Russia, coming almost exclusively from the European Union. And we're going to discuss that. We're going to talk about how dangerous that rhetoric is. And we're going to try to explain, again, as we've been doing all along, what Russia's strategy appears to be in Ukraine. And finally, we're going to reflect on what I, anyway, consider the most embarrassing speech by a president at the United Nations that Donald Trump gave yesterday. Imagine this. He told Europeans primarily, but most every country in the world, he told them that their countries suck. And he said, the US is better in everything than any of you people. Another thing we'll talk about, he said, we have the greatest weapons ever, but we don't want to use them. But we did in Iran, in Yemen. And so these are just some of the things that we'll comment on when we talk about Donald Trump's speech. Now, who are we? We are three individuals. Here we are. Peter Frohwein, who is from the United States and from the state of Georgia. And Richard Dillman, who comes from the state of Connecticut. And myself, of course, who originates from the state of Maine. So, amigos, hombres, let's kick it off tonight. Let's start with the threats of war coming from primarily the European Union and NATO. Peter, I'm going to hand it over to you first. Take it away.
Well, I guess what we've seen lately is a couple things that I believe they're actually false flag events. There's first of all the drones that went from inside Ukraine to Poland, and then Poland said, "Hey, these are Russian drones. Russia, we just got attacked by Russia. We need to have a discussion with other NATO members about this incident." And to date, there's no proof whatsoever that Russia had anything to do with these drones. What I believe happened is these were drones, these were decoy drones that are used when Russia sends other drones that are actually active with weapons on them. So I believe what had happened is these are decoy drones that Ukraine got a hold of, and then they repurposed them and they sent them in, pretending, that they came from Russia. And this is the same thing that Poland said too. This is provocation. This is, you know, possible act of war. Just all nonsense. And Russian government said, "Hey, we'd like to talk to you about this. We didn't do this." So we're open to dialogue. We'd like to see the evidence here. We'd like to sit down with you. None of that's happened. And then the latest false flag, I believe, event was there were three Russian jets, I think, over the Baltic,
Baltic, yeah.
um, traveling, um, I think, from parts of Russia to other parts of Russia over the Baltic, and there was some claim that they had gone into some NATO airspace, which I don't believe that for a second either. So I believe what's happened is the NATO is, I believe, is desperate for war, and I believe actually the next step, since these fake false flags haven't worked, these small fake false flags haven't worked, that the next step is they're going to escalate that the NATO is going to escalate this, meaning I'm very worried that they're going to create an event where there's mass casualties of in some NATO country and try to blame it on Russia, and then and do what they do, just make up stories, make up evidence, and then so Russia's been very wise about how they've handled this, and I'm glad they had. But it's clear to me that right now NATO wants and is talking about direct war every day with Russia inside their countries. I'm watching some newscasts inside some of these NATO countries, and they're telling their citizens get ready for war with Russia. Crazy, crazy things.
Richard, what's
Yeah.
your take?
Well, yeah, Peter's right straight on what he's talking about. Absolutely. France, just maybe 2 weeks ago, was telling their hospital service to get ready for troops, injuries, war injuries and stuff like that. Um, Finland, there's been provocations with Finland and also with Sweden along the Baltic Sea. Uh, they're just every day they're trying. Almost every day this is happening where they're trying to get the narrative going that here's Russia. Not only are they attacking and fighting the war in Ukraine, but now they're probing into NATO countries, Poland, Romania, Lithuania, Estonia, especially, and along the Transnistria border with the Moldova. This is starting to do, they're starting to send these narratives into the press almost on a daily basis. So this is where it's coming from. They want trying to get the people ready for, oh boy, not only is Russia, fighting in Ukraine, but we better get ready because they're going to be coming here, in NATO countries. So it doesn't look like there's any peace talks being anywhere. As a matter of fact, any mention of peace is just quickly shut down. There's no negotiations that I know of going on anymore. Trump had something like a 50-day thing he was going to give maybe like 2 months ago, probably right around now it's ended, where he was giving Russia 50 days to come up with some sort of a solution. And they're kind of in the news today. I noticed they were, I forget which NATO country it was, but they were saying, oh, that this is coming down to 50 days, and that's up, and Russia is not moving ahead at all with any proposals for a negotiated peace, and we better get more ready for everything. And it's just this narrative going on. uh, they seem to be in a situation to where they're not going to accept a Russian victory in Ukraine. They're even talking about, oh yeah, maybe we could send, um, Romanian. I just heard this today. Romanian and Polish aircraft will, within a couple of weeks, will be in Ukraine. And then Trump's kind of hinting around that, well, maybe we could put a no-fly zone. I have to see this happen. How he would explain this: a no-fly zone in Ukraine. This is what they're talking about, though. They're talking about basically what they've been leading up to, at least from the beginning of this whole year, saying basically we are not going to accept a loss in Ukraine. We've seen, I think we're going to later on talk about NATO troops in Odessa in that area, but this is, they see the Russians steadily moving west, and they're even, Russia now is right in the Dnipropetrovsk area, close to the city. They pretty much have the Donbass mopped up. There's still a little bit of areas over in the Donbass that aren't totally free there, but so that's what it looks like. It's just like it's just going to be more and more provocations, and the narrative like we're talking about of look at Russia now. They're flying in our they're flying in our airspace. Oh yeah, here's the other thing too is this is real big. NATO, they're not saying too much about this, that Russia have put Iskanders in Kaliningrad, which is that enclave on where would that be, on the Lithuanian German border, I think it is. They have an enclave there since World War II. And they have put Iskanders in there. I kind of welcome that myself. It's kind of saying to, oh, you want to put with those tomahawks. You want to put tomahawks in Romania and in Poland. So now we got Iskanders in Kaliningrad, and then Iskanders can go pretty good. I think 600 kilometers. They retrofitted them for about 600 kilometers, and they're nasty. Those are real. They're a Mach 5, though. They're very hard for NATO to shoot them down. And they can hit pretty much almost all of Europe now just from Kaliningrad. So, but before they had provoked, remember a general about 3 months ago, maybe beginning of the summer, was bragging about, oh, we could go in Kaliningrad and we could mop that place up in a matter of hours. He was talking about that. So maybe that's Russia's answer to the general about mopping up. But, for us being here, we'll always have the hopium that, well, maybe it'd be over, but it doesn't look that way. It looks like it's just going to keep dragging on, and maybe even break out of Ukraine and be in some other place. Could be very soon. I'm not hoping for that. I know most people here are not, but who knows? It's just a situation here that they just don't. They're not going to accept it. They're not going to accept a loss in Ukraine. That's the way it looks. At least that's what their rhetoric is. I don't see how they're going to back it up that much, but
and that's the point. That's the point. Right now, the EU and NATO they're basically bankrupt. NATO has been proven to be extremely weak, has had no success. All they've had is failures in Ukraine. Both of them have been sending most of their weapons supplies to Ukraine. They can't manufacture them fast enough. And Trump is saying, well, we're not going to give any weapons or money directly to Ukraine. We're going to sell them to you, and you guys can then buy them and use them. The problem with that is the EU and NATO don't have any money. Those economies are in free fall. I think several of them are in recession. There's been thousands of bankruptcies reported across the EU, huge numbers in Germany, and so this is all. It's very dangerous rhetoric, because when you start preparing your people for war, as you both have pointed out, I mean, to the extent that I don't know if it was Finland or somebody else told their people to stock up on 4 days of food, water, and a generator if you had it, gas. When you start telling people that, people, they got to be listening, they got to be wondering. And so I think, and I agree with you guys, that this rhetoric is dangerous, and it's coming from east to west. I mean, the Finnish president, this Alexander Stubb, he has been making one provocative statement after another. They want to increase their military along the border. It's a huge border with Russia. I thought at one time that the Finns were really intelligent. I thought they were very sophisticated people, really wanted more neutrality than war. Now, I don't know what it's like, what the Finns are saying, but this is what their leadership is saying. And then even the Czech president, he says Europe ought to have the ability to shoot down Russian planes for violating their airspace. And when Trump was asked this yesterday after he spoke at the United Nations, he said, "Do you agree they ought to be able to shoot down planes?" And he goes, "Yeah." Immediately he said, "Yes." Then he qualified it and he said, "Well, it depends." Now, if you think that it's just places like Finland, and I call them the yapping chihuahuas from the Baltics, who are probably more to blame for this war rhetoric than anybody else. So then you have Macron in France, and he's talked at one time of sending his troops there together with Germany and together with Great Britain, the UK. He and the UK are still talking about sending more of their Storm Shadow and whatever they call their other missiles to Ukraine so they can strike deep into Russia. Nobody's excluded. Von der Leyen, oh my God. This woman probably has done more than anybody else to jeopardize all of Europe because of her leadership or lack of leadership. And so I think I agree with you guys. It's a very dangerous situation. You both talked about the increased number of provocations. And I want to ask you now, President Putin has shown incredible tolerance and patience at not responding the way they want him to respond. Peter, how do you see Putin's response to these provocations? What do you think that his strategy is?
Well, I'm very grateful that he's shown an amazing amount of restraint, because from what I can tell now, a lot of strikes from Ukraine into Russia are targeting civilian targets. In fact, you guys know just a couple of days ago, I think it was on Sunday, just 30 miles west of us, a resort was attacked, a school, and I think there were 2 or 3 deaths and a number of injuries. Thankfully, it was on a Sunday when the kids weren't in school, because if it had been a school day, there would have been a lot of children killed. My point being now is these are acts of terrorism by Ukraine. I mean, when you knowingly target civilians, then these are terrorist acts. This isn't even within the bounds of war. These are just this is just terrorism. So um, I think I've thought about this. And I'm going to just mention what Trump and others have said about okay, Russia should have is only moved very uh, you know a short distance in this war, making progress. Well, there's a reason for this. Initially, the Russians came in and they wanted to initiate a peace agreement, which they did. But then Boris Johnson flew in from the UK and said, "No, no, no, no. You don't. You're not going to have peace." So, but the reason things have moved so slowly is for there's three reasons for this. Is the first reason is um, Russia cares and does not target civilians. So you're moving and very careful about not hitting civilians. It'll really slow things down. Well, also when you move slowly, you reduce the number of your own military casualties. Well, on the flip side, the reason to not move and just keep hitting the enemy and keep your guys safe is you increase the number of casualties on the other side. Now, this is a key point because when all this is over, the Nazis that Russia's bombing, you don't want a lot of those guys left. So in the moving slow is a strategy that I agree with. And so far, it's worked because the overall strategy, too, is not to move too quickly because I think Western leaders, including Trump, are extremely unpredictable. And I think any large movements could have potentially put us quickly on a nuclear path. And so I hear a lot of people, argue and say Putin should have, this should have been gone a lot quicker. But if you look at what actually has happened, is he's kept us out of nuclear confrontation, which he understands the consequences of that. That if one nuke goes, there's a high likelihood that all of the nukes will go, and then we're all in deep trouble. So I'm grateful that he's thoughtful and meticulous. I know it's very painful for him to see any Russians, especially civilians, die. Um, um, and it's even painful for me as an American to see Russian civilians die. And I don't want to see any death on either side of this, but it's I'm grateful that President Putin's in charge and he's basically kept the world safe, not just Russia, but I mean safe from taking things nuclear. Because, like I said, I think the Western leaders are so unpredictable and dangerous in their thinking that I think that's one of the reasons he's tried to be very slow in some of the movements to not escalate this to. And the other point too about Europe has nothing Russia wants or needs. So this idea that Russia wants to go into any NATO country or any country outside of Russia and take, they don't have anything Russia wants or needs. So it makes zero sense. And then these so-called provocations like these drones and the jets, you know, going into airspace, that makes no sense either. Because Russia's been extremely careful to not um, have provocations like this, and it would make no sense at this point. Russia's going to win this. I mean, it's not even close. So that of an army that's or a military that's desperate, and Russia's the opposite of desperate. There's no way to lose this war in Ukraine. It's impossible militarily, completely impossible at this point. So I don't believe these provocations were real. The NATO says that happened. They're false flags. So again, I'm grateful that President Putin's um, taken the actions that he has, and I think everyone involved should be thanking him for keeping this from going nuclear.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, and I don't know whether Trump believes this or not, but he said it yesterday. He called Russia a paper tiger. He said if they were so all powerful, they would have finished this in one day. And he just used that as an example of how weak and unprofessional the Russian military has been. So, all right, Richard, you go ahead and take it, and then I'll have a couple of comments after you
Yeah,
finish.
sure. Peter's straight on. I agree everything what he's saying. Yeah, you know, like it or not, the way as slowly as Russia's been moving and stuff like that, I personally don't like it or didn't like it. Now I'm starting to understand it a little better that they didn't want to go in. Actually, they moved real fast. If you remember, within the beginning of the SMO, they were in Kyiv within 2 or 3 days. And then all that stuff that started with we'll sign the peace thing and all this, and they got kind of hoodwinked because Russia was still think they were with the Minsk Accords and all this other stuff. But that's a few years down the road, past us. But yes, you could say, oh yeah, Putin's weak or something like that. Uh, he doesn't he's not emotional like the Europeans and the Americans. Craziness. Oh well, let's blow them out. Let's just go nuke them, or let's just go arc light them with a whole B-52s, and we'll take care of them in 2 weeks and stuff like that. Well, this Nazi thing been going on since the early 1990s, especially being highly financed by the CIA. It's been a cancer. It's been a cancer growing in Ukraine for 30, 40 years. And the Zionist element there, when Russia went in with the SMO, there's 30 countries against Russia or more. And, of NATO, 30 countries are helping Ukraine. So Russia had quite a bigger bite to chew than a lot of people really understand. Until Russia started really realizing we're not only just fighting Ukraine and the Nazis, we're fighting NATO. That happened about 2 years ago. So that's when things really started changing. When the Russians first came in, they were outmanned by 6 or 7 to 1. That's why they bogged down in the Donbass big time. Okay, but now, I mean, you look now, the Russians. I think their numbers around 1.3 million and growing. And I'm riding on the bus the other day, and I was just looking at an advertisement on the bus, a sticker, offering people that want to volunteer come in, and the first there were 1.3 million rubles to come on in, and then they were offering pretty good pay. I mean, probably like what would be about over $2,000 a month. So they have no problem getting volunteers. It's not where the draft. There's not guys running Georgia and Armenia anymore. Matter of fact, I just saw the guy about a month ago. I had been good. I was good. We became pretty good buddies when I first came here to Yalta, and then he took off, and because he didn't want to be in the war. He's a Ukrainian guy, a really nice guy, but he went to Bulgaria, and then he went to Dubai. And I ran into him over here, and I said, "Wow, hey Dennis, how you doing?" And he says, I says, "Well, aren't you worried about that 7-year jail sentence and all that for people that were flee?" He goes, "Oh no, they got rid of all that." So it was nice to see him. He's back here in Yalta, and good to see him. And he's not worried about being locked up or something, because the Russians understood that they had enough people to come in and join up and volunteer, that you don't want to fight the war, don't fight it. That's the situation here that I see. But yeah, the thing too is, okay, if they had gone in there, well, like President Putin said, they wanted to denazify, get rid of those Azov right sectors, scum. They're just inhuman, the stuff they do. To do that, especially going into the west of Kiev and Lvov and these other Rivne, if they did it too fast, the Russians didn't want to have like a setup to where they would have like a thing almost like in Afghanistan, where you would have the civilian enemy, or even Vietnam, where you would have like a Vietnamese civilians and North Vietnamese, set up to where you didn't know where the enemy is and where they weren't. So they were kind of what they were doing now, what they've been doing for the last couple of years, is just meeting out in the sticks, meeting out in places where the villages are meeting other villages, and really fighting the war in these shelter belts, and fighting anybody that wants to fight them. They're telling the Nazis, "Come on, and we'll fight you." And that's what they're doing, and grinding them up, and making more. But if you notice, they're not blowing all bridges up in Dnipropetrovsk. They're not doing that. And like Peter said, they're not really going into villages to fight the Ukrainians. They want to fight the Nazis, and like it or not, if the Russian military are doing it the way they want to do it, they're doing it not the way the Western media is saying they should do it. They're doing it the way they want to do it. And I'll tell you what. Last night? Big Shy, yeah, it was okay. I watched the video today. I think they hit Moscow yesterday, or they shot about almost 100 drones in Moscow yesterday. Maybe a few got through. They shot a lot of them down. But you watch today or tomorrow what they do to Kyiv or Odessa. They'll hit them with 500 at least. And that's what the Russians have been doing since the beginning of this year. They're very quiet. They're not telling you what they're doing. But they want to hit Crimea over here, send some over here to blow up a sanitarium. Well, you're going to see about a couple hundred hit Odessa or Nikolaev very soon, in the next couple of days. And that's what they're doing. You want to shoot 10 over here, they'll shoot 100, because the Russian production facilities they can shoot 1,000 drones a day. No problem. Their production facilities now are bigger and better than those 31 countries that are attacking Russia now. Russia's capacity now, with over 2 million people in their war sector, is getting ready to fight all in NATO. Or they are ready. I don't know if they're totally ready, but they're working into that situation where they can produce right now more than those 31 countries. And that's a fact.
Yeah.
So, behind the scenes, the Russian military is getting prepared to fight them all, I think. I really believe it.
Yeah, well, a lot of people are saying that Russia will be at war with Europe within a year or two. But you made another good point. There's a tremendous imbalance between Russian weapons, Russian equipment, drones, and long-range missiles that Ukraine just doesn't have, probably never had, but they've run out of whatever they've had. Patriot missile battalions have been targeted by Russia and been blown up. I don't know if they have many left at all. And you mentioned the other strategy that Russia has been employing. They're not sending waves and waves of troops. They're sending waves and waves of drones and missiles and taking out strategic command headquarters. And Richard, you mentioned, missiles to Odessa. They've been bombing the hell out of Odessa for the last several weeks. And they've taken out a facility that housed senior European commanders actually in Odessa who have been the ones leading the strategy. And so you're right. Russia's strategy has been to go at their own pace, to use drones and missiles instead of just throwing their own troops into the meat grinder. But as you both know, and American people or anybody who's listening to this ought to know, for the last 2 months, Russia has been progressively moving forward all along the front. There are weak spots because Ukraine has had to take troops from one area and put them in another to bolster and to counter the Russians. And so I think what we're seeing is a war of attrition. It's a war that is designed to wear down Ukraine in terms of manpower and in terms of the ability to fight. On the other hand, it's a war of attrition against NATO and the United States that can't produce enough weapons to help Ukraine continue in the fight, even just to defend itself. So I think Russia's strategy, if you look at it from that point of view, is exactly what we're saying. It's a war of attrition. I think Putin said the other day, maybe it was even today, the war could even last another couple of years. That's what Russia is prepared to do. Richard, you made a good point. Over 1 million men and women in the Russian military that are either battle experienced or have been trained. All of those volunteers that you talk about, they've all been intense training. So is Russia just doing this to be able to achieve victory in Ukraine? Or is Russia looking ahead for a possible war against NATO and the EU countries? It's a very dangerous situation. I don't think people, for sure in the United States, have any clue how dangerous this is and how provocative their country has been. Their deep state, their State Department, their CIA, and their president. All right, I want to shift gears now. Now, we're going to talk about the economy. Could you guys, maybe could we borrow a little bit of like butter or sugar, a couple of eggs, because Jesus, we're having a hard time. We're having a hard time getting by. So I mean, I wonder if I could come by and maybe borrow a few staples from you guys. And Richard, I wonder if you've got enough gas in your car to maybe drop by one of these days and bring us over a few things that we need. Richard, I'm going to go to you first on this one.
Yeah, as far as the stores and the food shops you're talking about, well, I've seen nothing. There's stock full. There's stock full here. There's no need for nothing. No. Everything is normal. It's normal life here as far as that goes. There's plenty of food, and gasoline is not a problem. No, I haven't seen anything like that. It's normal life here. It really is. There's nowhere lack of anything that I see. It's just pretty much normal life here.
All right, Peter, how do you see it?
Oh yeah, I think it's amazing the way the Western media and the U.S. government can twist. I mean, it's it just blows my mind. It's not just normal. The economy here is strong, and I'll back that up by some facts. Is we live here in Yalta. I know for a fact that this year, the number of tourists, Russian tourists who came to Yalta was a new record high. And
Oh,
every night that I would go out, the restaurants are full, cafes were full, all the hotels were full. And these are people who've traveled long distances to come to the beach and they were spending money. So this is not, and to Rich's point, there's all the anything you want in the stores is here. Food. Now, I think it's funny. Sometimes the shelves are empty of there's no milk, there's no eggs, and there's no bread. But that's because these people come into the beach, don't bring food with them. So when they get here to the beach, they buy everything. But this is funny because this is even normal in the US. I lived at the beach in Florida for 10 years. And when the tourist would come to the beach, same thing would happen in the Publix grocery store in
yeah.
Florida. No eggs, no bread, and no milk because the tourists who come to the beach buy everything when they get there. Well, same thing happened here this summer. So, and also, I was just reading today um, a lot of Russians, there's a record number of Russians who've been traveling to Turkey for vacation. And so they've been traveling outside the country on vacation, spending money. So there's this idea that the Russian economy is in trouble is just complete nonsense. And to Rich's point too, I the last gas station, the gas line I saw in my life of people lined up to get gas, I think it was in the mid 70s in the US when there was a gas crisis. And I think I was 16 or 17 years old. I remember getting up early in the morning and having to go to and sit in line to get gas. There's no lines here at gas stations at all. Gas, it's all normal. In fact, it's when we're here in Yalta, we don't really know that there's a war going on because everything here is normal. Stores are full of, and I can get anything here that I could get in the U.S. Anything. There's no shortage of anything. I mean, it's the stores just full of, anything you want. So yeah, it's it's complete nonsense, this narrative that the Western media and the U.S. government, and I don't know where Trump is getting his information. Maybe the CIA is just lying to him. But I even want to mention you know, Trump keeps saying numbers that aren't true. Like, 5,000 troops are dying on each side of this every day. Well, that's not true at all. The actual numbers, and I know these are real numbers, is the actual dead Ukrainian soldiers to date is between 1.8 and 2 million. And the actual Russian soldiers is around 250,000 dead. Those are real numbers. And then also, it's crazy. He's saying 5,000 a week. It's like, no. It's, I think the last real number I heard was between 50 and 100,000 Ukrainians dying every month. And then it's just in now Russians, it's single digits. It's a complete, it's like 20, 30 to 1. Or it's crazy. The imbalance right now, because it's like you said, it's a war of attrition. And Russia's in just keep sending in the drones, the missiles, the long range artillery. No hurry, and then just wear them down to the point. It's sad to see this, but it's working. But no, it's things are normal here. Now I'm glad September 1st, all the kids started school again, so all the tourists went home, which is nice because things are quieter here now. They're not as crazy because going to the beach
Yeah.
this summer was crazy. It was packed. People, tourists
Back.
everywhere at the beach this summer.
Absolutely.
Everywhere.
It was.
Yeah, Peter, you made a couple of really good points. Uh, they set an all-time record here for tourists, and they're
Yeah.
all Russians. There are
Yeah.
hardly any
That's
foreign
right. Yeah,
tourists
that's
because of the sanctions. There aren't any cruise ships coming because of visa problems, because of you have to bring cash, you can't bring a credit card. And so, as Peter said, uh, an all-time record. I don't know how many million it is, but it's a lot. And the hotels were either 98 to 99% full or completely full, depending on the hotel. Rental properties, which is a big thing here. People rent a flat that they purchased before and they've remodeled it. You see these cars all over with signs saying rental property, apartment near the beach, near the sea. You see them everywhere. And these places are filled. The other thing Peter mentioned, Russians are not just going to Turkey. I read a report the other day, and Russians traditionally have gone to places where they don't need visas. Vietnam, Thailand, uh, they've gone to a lot of those Asian countries. They're going now to China. And so the economy is what? In the trash? It's absolutely crazy. And I'm wondering, guys, if Donald Trump is just using this. He knows that it's not that bad. And is he using it for whom? For which audience? For his audience at home, his MAGA guys? Uh, these people in the United States that he know that are not paying attention to anything and will believe anything they're told? Is he also playing to Europe and NATO, trying to make them think that Russia is really weak? So I don't know. He's goes back and forth and he contradicts himself constantly. And then Peter, I think he just flat out lies. And if it's not lies, is that his brain is not working properly and he's using numbers and he's using made up facts. It's really kind of concerning. But anyway, our refrigerator is full. We have plenty of eggs. We haven't had a problem in the supermarket because we don't really go to the supermarket very often. We buy almost everything from the outdoor markets, of which they're all over the place. Anyway, so
I was gonna mention when the tourists come and buy up all the eggs and milk and bread, the next day that's all there. It's all back to normal. So it's just when the tourists get here, but they're other than that, yeah, it's like
now,
you said.
in order to be transparent and fair, the unemployment in Russia is around 2%. It's the lowest that it's ever been. That's a major indicator of how the economy is going. Now, I mentioned transparency. Everything that comes into Crimea, most of it is coming across the bridge at Kerch. And because security is so intense, even when it's not the tourist season, you can end up having to wait 3 or 4 hours or more if there was a threat. And even when there isn't a threat, every single car is inspected underneath with a mirror. Open your trunk. They even have people opening their suitcases. Now, I've gone through this 3 times, not this summer, but earlier this year. The same thing. So when you think about everything that comes into Crimea, from all the food, when you think about everything that's going into the grocery stores, it's got to come in by truck. And these trucks, like everybody else, get stopped and searched. In spite of that, somehow or other, there's no lack here, as Peter and Richard were just saying. Now, I want to shift gears, guys, with the time we have left. And I'm not real concerned about finishing on the hour. This is kind of going just like our regular meetings at the pizza parlor here.
Yeah.
It's just kind of random. We go all over the place and etc. But when you're given a show like this for an audience, it's kind of important that we keep it within most people's attention span who would be watching this kind of show. All right, Donald Trump yesterday at the United Nations. Guys, I took a bunch of notes, but from your recollection of what you saw or what you read, Peter, as an American, what did you think and how do you feel?
You know, it's hard to know if Trump is really this. Almost everything I heard from him was a lie. I mean, this nonsense. It's, but
Well,
I don't know. To start with, he said the U.S. economy is the strongest economy in the world, which is not even close to being reality. In fact, the U.S. economy today is one of the weakest economies in the world. Last count of $37+ trillion debt, and that's accelerating as we speak to numbers that, every 90 days it's another trillion or some crazy number added to it with the interest. But so, and then it's just that. So talking about the economy, that we're strongest in the world, talking about we've got the strongest military in the world, that's just complete nonsense too. It's in fact, I'd say today it's one of the weakest militaries in the world. And it's just this, talking about, he doesn't clearly, if he believes what he says, he thinks the Russian economy is about to fall over, which is completely opposite of reality. I mean, it's just, and then on top of this, it's just every as far as I could tell, everything he said was a lie. And then he said, made a quote, "I'm a man of, I believe in speaking my mind and telling the truth." I'm like, where's the truth here? I mean, it's just like nonsense. So it was bizarre, and this whole idea too. He's saying stuff like, "And Ukraine can take back all the territory that Russia's taken." Well, that's impossible. I mean, literally at this point, it's. I mean, I believe it was impossible from the start of all this, but clearly at this point, Russia's won the war and will win the war. Whether it goes on another month or 2 years, it's it's sad to see because it's just more death. And what disturbs me most about this is Trump said he would end this when it's in 24 hours when he came into office. Now he should have, and he had the power to do that. And I keep asking the question, why didn't he? Why? Because according to my calculations, another 500,000 to 800,000 men, women, and children are dead because Trump didn't stop the war, and he could have called up Zelensky and said, "Okay, the war's over." And within 30 days, it would have stopped, and we wouldn't be at this juncture now where Europe and EU, or the EU and NATO, is talking about going to war with Russia. Then that threat would have been gone. And that's what even disturbs me more. Every day this conflict keeps going is one more day closer to a possible nuclear exchange. And then Trump says nonsense like, "Hey, China and India, you need to stop, and Europe, you need to stop buying Russian oil because you're causing the war." It's like, whoa, no. The U.S. started this war in 2014, and Trump could have stopped the war in January 20th. So what is he talking about? just complete nonsense. And like he's going to tell China and India where they should buy their. I mean, it's just so bizarre to me. He's acting like a bully, but he doesn't have anything to back it up. I mean, to your point, the U.S. is now desperately low on weapons. They don't have any more weapons to give to, and even if they like, they don't have any Patriots. It takes them, I don't know, to create a maybe one Patriot a battery a month. So maybe, but that can be chewed up in a week in Ukraine. So there's no, it's not just that. It's not just Patriots, but it's no, I don't know. A lot of other weapon systems is Russia's outbuilding weapon systems. I don't know, 10-1, and not just that is the Ukraine's running out of men. So if Trump is, I don't know whether they from what I can tell, it's most likely the CIA is just lying to him, and he believes. I can't believe that because they're a big part of the problem. The CIA just telling him as far as I can tell, all the information he has this is wrong. So somebody's lying to him, or he has got real numbers and just telling lies. I don't know why, but he's playing a dangerous game with the whole world because, like I said, every day this goes on, whether it's intentional or whether it's an accidental bunch of nuclear, he's playing an extremely dangerous game of Russian roulette with our lives. And this makes me very mad. It's like, stop this, Trump. You have the power to stop it. Stop blaming China. Stop blaming India. Stop blaming the EU for buying Russian oil. You stop it.
Yeah, well taken. Richard, what were your thoughts? What were you thinking?
Well, boy, I had to struggle and force myself to watch that. And, I mean, he was out there bragging about his accomplishments in the real estate adventures and how he was his bid of $500 million would have really fixed the United Nations, but they paid several $billions in cost overruns. And he didn't say nothing about his casinos and his bankruptcies and his other what do you call it, the pageants and stuff like that. And his Jeffrey Epstein stuff. He didn't say nothing about all that. The guy. Listen. The thing with Trump is, I see him as a satanic Zionist. Okay, he's right up Israel all the way, and these people, they lie about everything. Why we even listen to anything coming out of Netanyahu or anything really coming out of Trump? Because they lie about everything. They cannot tell you the truth. It's not in their soul to tell you the truth. Actually, they're inhuman. Just look at their actions. He's over there talking about the poor children and the stuff on the border, which is he says how great it is now on the border, but he doesn't mind giving Israel 1,000, 2,000 pound bombs to go in there and bomb the people in Palestine, the Palestinians in Gaza. It's just slaughtering, a genocide. There's no other way to put it. Okay, so whatever comes out of his mouth, the Central Intelligence Agency, they just seem to lie about everything. They don't. They just look at as us as, look, you just pay the taxes and we do what we do and you mind your own business or we'll lock you up or whatever. We have a place for you, for the United States people. And until the United States people get up and start doing something about it, they're just going to be it's just going to get more and more corrupt the way it is. Trump's a liar. He has to lie. They all lie. It just seems that way. I mean, the stuff that he was coming up and saying, most of his speech, he's like a narcissist drunk on his own ego, talking about how great he is and what, no, he's just, there's a lot of holes in his story, I mean, I just see him as a liar. I don't listen to anything he's got to say because how about Netanyahu? When Netanyahu opens up his mouth and talks, do people believe him anymore? You listen to him as facts? As a matter of fact, Netanyahu, I don't know, did he come on right after Trump? Because I saw a thing, a short clip of Netanyahu, and everybody walked out of the UN on him. Was it today or yesterday? Oh. They walked out on him. Big time, big time. Netanyahu got up there. They all walked out. The whole place walked out.
Oh wow! I haven't seen that. I got to look for
that. Yeah. So you listen. That's who they are. They're satanic Zionists, neocons. These are the same ones that did 9/11. Okay, there's PNAC documents. There's plenty of proof. There's no conspiracy. They did 9/11, and these are the same people that are doing this thing over here in Russia. There's no two ways about it. It's easily provable. RAND documents call for a break up Russia in several pieces and regime change in 2018. So, the neocons are all heavily into Europe, and they're not, like we had talked, they're not going to accept this loss in Ukraine. So anything coming out of his mouth is just suspect, I mean, maybe he might say something truthful along the line here or there, but most of the time it's all lies. It's all narrative. What did he say too? The number one, what did he say? He called Iran the number one terrorist country in the world. Yeah. I don't see Iran bombing Lebanon. I don't see Iran bombing Syria. The Saudis now have linked up with Pakistan, a nuclear armed Pakistan, because they know that they're on the list for Israel, on the list to take in most of Saudi Arabia, and they're they were before with their great Abraham Accords and all this other stuff. Because that's all down the toilet now, I believe. After they pulled this bombing in Qatar there. So, do you believe that the United States didn't have a thing? They didn't know about Israel just going to attack Qatar? Who did the in-flight aerial refueling of Israeli jets on their way out? So anything coming out of his mouth is all Lutnick, what Lutnick has to say, his handler in the White House, or Susie Wild, another Zionist, That's all I see. Is I just see a Zionist-controlled White House and a Zionist-controlled Washington, D.C. They're all traitors down there. They suck up to anything Israel and AIPAC tell them. And that's a fact, The United States have been taken over by these bloodline families who control that. That's who, we've talked about that many times. And I don't see any changes there. It's just, and the media, who owns the media? Who's passing on the narratives and the lies? The Zionists. Zionists own that mostly. So anything coming out of Trump, he's a Zionist satanic moron as far as I'm concerned. I don't listen to anything he got to say. I don't believe anything. And I don't think the Russians believe him either. Because there's nothing coming out of him. There's nothing coming out of him that's true. There's no truth coming out of him at all. I don't know what happened to him. The first time around, he did a few things that I kind of applauded. But this time around, he seems to be right up with Israel, man. He's just right there within satanic Zionist Israel, neocons, whatever you want to call them, rhinos. They're all sucking up to the satanic evil. That's the way I see it.
Tell us next time how you feel about all of that, Richard.
Well, that's the way I see it. I
Yeah, I
mean,
know.
sorry, but
I know.
I can't. One other thing, he did say something about the migrants, and he was blaming the United Nations for the migrants. Anybody, if you really want to know about the migrants and how that come about, it was written in 1925 by a guy named Copenhagen Kalergi. He was a Zionist guy. And just check out the Kalergi plan, and it is right on to. Here, I got it written down. This is what the main thing with that is the mass immigration of non-whites, and that's exactly what they've been doing in Europe. The plan to bring into their new world order or whatever this Zionist control by taking away the sovereignty and the ethnic cultures of Europe. That's what the Kalergi plan is. That's what happened in the last 25 years. He's blaming them on the countries. Well, they're all the order takers in there. The countries like Sweden or Britain who have done that to their own country. Right?
So you made a big point about Israel and Trump, but one of the most obnoxious things he said yesterday in his speech, and he emphasized it, this war of Israel and Gaza and Palestine has to stop. He repeated it a couple of times. And yet, here he is, this liar in chief is the main source of funding for Israel and Netanyahu to billions of dollars a year.
Billions. Yeah.
Those 2,000 and 3,000 pound bombs or whatever they are, everything has come from him, from the United States. So this was one of the most outrageous things. I'm going to finish this up with just a couple of comments just to show his bluster and his condescending, arrogant attitude to the people of the world. I wish they would have gotten up and left, just like they did what you said they did for Netanyahu. He basically told them all to their face, your countries all suck. You're worthless.
Yeah.
He said the United States is better at everything. He said, we even have the cleanest air. That's how good we are. And he said, none of you know what you're doing. You're all going to hell if you don't check immigration. And then he said something else, which, again, the hubris. We have the greatest weapons ever, but we don't want to use them. Oh, really? Well, they just bombed the hell out of Yemen. They bombed the hell. They allowed Israel to attack Qatar with our weapons and our planes. And it was directly involved in bombing Iran. I mean, he had the gall to say this to all of those countries that were gathered there and were listening to him. And then he said, you talk about arrogance. He says, I'm right about everything. This was what was, I mean, it was crazy. If I had any hair, I'd be wanting to pull it out. And he said some other things that, he said, you should really listen to me and do what I say, because I know what is going on. And then he said, and because of all I've done for peace in the world, ending 7 wars, they should be all giving me all kinds of awards. If people haven't seen that speech, I encourage you to watch it. Not because I want you to be to get sick and throw up over it, but if you haven't seen it, you got to find out what your president is really saying and what he's all about. And he wasn't just talking to the American public through the mainstream media. He was talking to the entire world. Guys, this was not unlike any of our meetings down at the pizza place. we tend to go on, we ramble a little bit, but we really tell it like how we see it. Now, it's not going to be like this every week. What our plan is we're going to take you on location, because none of us expect you to believe what we're saying about life here in Crimea, about life in Russia. We're going to take you out and about here in Yalta. We're going to show you what is really happening. We're going to show you people strolling everywhere without fear of crime, without fear of being bombed, even though it's happening, just 30 miles away. As Peter said, life goes on as normal. We'll take you into supermarkets. We'll take you into the farmers markets. We'll take you to different cultural and historical sites that will help you understand how deep and how profound is Russian culture and tradition. So guys, this was great. We're going to see you again next week. And if everything works as we planned, we will do an on-site show coming from Levadia Palace, the site of the Yalta Conference in 1945. We'll give you a tour of the grounds, and then we will talk about what the Yalta Conference accomplished in 1945, 80 years ago, and what they accomplished as it's seen through the eyes of the world today. No stability, no peace, but border conflicts, culture, language conflicts that have been quiet for a long time, but now are exploding all around us. So that does it for this third edition. Adios, amigos.